Okay, so I've been noticing a trend lately where it's encouraged to be overconsumption, man. There's a lot more incentive to buy whatever you want more than what you need. Even in the automobile industry, where you have cars which are like basically you don't need them, but you still go for them because they have bargainable deals or whatnot. It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense at all. You're supposed to buy what you need, how much ever covers your practical use case, but you're not going for that. You're going for more like the highest speed. You're not going to drive super fast majority of the time. Why would you go for it? You're going to get groceries, maybe you're going to go out on trips. All right, get something appropriate for that, get something a little bit economic for that. You're not going to need the most performance, you're not going to need anything more than necessary. All that does is put a bigger dent in your bank account or your wallet, and it's going to affect you. Who is it going to profit? The companies. You're going to listen to whatever the company says over your own interest because it makes sense to you in a sort of way. But what it does not make sense to is practicality and in an economic sense. There is a lot of other industries as well where this is prevalent. Fast fashion is a very big thing now, right? You're supposed to keep up with the trends or whatnot. You're supposed to look a certain predefined way that's set by social media standards. Of course, that's not something you have to take compulsorily. It's something that's going on the side. If you want, you can follow it. If you do not want to, you do not have to. But the majority of the populace is already hyper-fixated on trying to belong with one another or try to be unique in their own individualistic sort of way that in turn becomes a collective view. So you look just like almost everybody else because you're trying to keep up with a trend, but also be individualistic. Who does that profit? The companies. It does not profit you at all. It's just something that gives you a placebo effect of belonging better or being accepted better. Going back to the automobile kind of view, a proper example is going to be buying a full-size SUV when you have a family of 4 and all you need is groceries. You're not going to need that much engine power. You're going to lose out on fuel efficiency. You're going to lose out on easy maintenance because the bigger the vehicle, the parts are a bit more expensive. Generally, it's going to be super hard on your use case. Like I said, it's not going to be an optimal buy at all. Why do we have this modern view of trying to always keep up with something the latest? We do not need the latest. We can buy 5 to 10 years old on a car. We can purchase something that's been out of fashion for a while. It's not going to put you on a different track. It's your mentality that makes you belong. It's not whatever you wear or buy or keep. It's none of that makes you as individualistic and unique as you are. And companies know that, yet they've planted this idea in your head using a lot of advertisements, a lot of sponsorships, a lot of brand deals with people that you see at least once a week by chance. You see it in your reels, you see it in your shorts, whatever you see it in. You're just exposed to that idea of the bigger is better. Of course, if you want a more technical view, I do not need a 5-liter V8 as a car if my main purpose of having a car is getting from point A to B and having a little bit of fun. All right, if I have a family of 4, I could go for a smaller sedan like a Camry, something that works, something that does get the job done. And if I have a bit more of a bigger budget, I could go for something a bit more lax, maybe like a lower end Lexus, a used Lexus or whatever that is. In the end, I'm accomplishing my goal of going from A to B. When in reality, I could easily be like, okay, the most value for deal cars look like a full-sized SUV. For my family of 4, that is optimal. That does not seem optimal, even though that's how it comes off in advertisements. Always look for what you need in a certain way where you're saving enough money, where you're not wasting a lot of money. Wasting is usually what this economy thrives on, right? They do not want you to spend your money wisely. Always try to purchase what you exactly need or a little bit of more than what you need. You don't have to go the highest end or the highest top of the band for everything that you purchase. It's a very common trend in things nowadays, in many things nowadays, especially where beginners who are getting into a hobby are buying the top of the line items for that hobby. It does not make financial sense at all. Why do we as humans have to keep on going for the top end of things that are not even meant for us? For example, headphones. You do not need DT990 Pros, right? You do not need the top of the line Sennheiser headphones for casually listening to music. Yet, if you have the money, you will still go for it. And obviously, it's not a very wise investment, even if you have the money and you're a beginner. You could start with something a little bit more mid-end or lower to mid-end, something that will improve your quality of life immensely. If you go for something that much of a top end, a studio headphones, first off, you're not going to be able to get the most value out of it because they need a little bit more tinkering, they need a bit more technical expertise to get the most out of them. So you're not going to find your value even if you have the money to spend on something like that. Something that's a little bit more beginner to mid-end makes a lot more sense for a person getting into a hobby. Same goes for almost everything, even computers, even like I said before, cars, even watches. If I have an interest in watches, it does not mean that I have to go for the top end, something that's more of a status symbol than a practicality. Of course, if you have the money, you can go for it. But what makes more sense in a long-term kind of way is to buy something that gets the job done, but has a little bit of flex to it as well. It does not have to be something super bland, unless you're that kind of person who likes stuff that is purely just a textbook. It does not have any bells and whistles at all. Let's try to buy or even acquire whatever we need, something that's fulfilling our purpose, and maybe if we have that much to spend, go for the value for money upper end products, not the ones that are just status symbols, something that just conveys that you have a lot of money. It should bring value to you individually. It should make you feel better, it should make you feel happier, it should make you feel like the money that you made is worth being the money that you made. It's not supposed to be something that you bought and you lost interest in because you don't know how to figure it out. It should be something that you bought. It's super simple to get into, and that makes you feel the return on your investment for your hard-earned money, right? Same goes for everything that I just listed. Same goes for our basic mentality in general. Let's try to have this society of needs more than a society of wants, where we're trying to use whatever we buy to a very high extent. And because of that, let's buy something that we can usefully in general. Like I said, let's not buy full-sized SUVs that we're not going to take off-road at all. Let's get something that is a good enough commuter for our daily commute, provided that we want to have a little bit of amount of fun. We can have some room for that as well. But moreover, let's not overspend and ruin what we made just because of advertisements. They just want you to spend money. They don't see you as a person who wants to experience a product. They see you as a person who literally has money to spend. That should not be how it is in general. Because of that, we're having businesses that turn very bad towards customers. We're having companies that literally ghost complaints. If you buy a product and you do not feel like it's working as it intended to, you literally cannot get back, or you cannot get a refund, you cannot get a replacement for that product. It's in such a bad situation in most countries. So if we're spending to a company, let's spend to a company that gives value to its customers. Let's spend on places where they actively want to innovate, they want to create, they want to deliver to people exactly what the people want, and not anything more just to make their shareholders a little bit more happier. If we start thinking in that kind of way, I believe that a lot of companies who are having really shady business practices, they could correct their ways. They could turn into better companies. Of course, it's not good to assume that a bad company is going to stay a bad company. There are a lot of examples where companies make mistakes, they apologize, they turn better. So I think it's better to start looking at businesses this way than just the products that they give us. Let's start to look at companies a bit more deeper. Let's look at them as entities that treat us as another entity. Let's not look at them as just a shop or a warehouse or a store where we can get stuff. Let's look at how they treat customers. Let's look at how they want you to spend on items that are properly engineered and not just tuned so specifically to extract the largest amount of money from you as they can. And yeah, I think there's a lot of problems with society as a whole where we're overspending, we're spending more than what we need. We're always going for wants nowadays. Of course, there is a room for wants. Living is basically just experiencing. It's just trying new things. Let's try to be better. Let's try to be a little bit more different. Let's try to make the people who run our economies treat us better as customers, as individuals. Let us not try to let them get comfortable with giving us bad deals. let's try to also, on our part, educate ourselves on what we actually need and what we want. What do we do every day that requires an item to be purchased? All right, what band of that item do we need? What item is going to give us the best return for our money? And in general, let's try to think of it in this way. Let's improve as a society. I want things to get better. I believe everyone can educate themselves more and more on things that they purchase and that they spend their hard-earned money on. Yeah, that's all I have to say about this, and I'll see you guys in the next one.